Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Have I been? I've been good. This week has been pretty busy. Have I been self-caring? I did a face mask with Gary the other day. That is the extent of the self-care that I've done this week. I'd say, yeah, I'd say it's been sufficient. Hey, Prodigy. Yeah, so on like Amazon, there's like this just mega pack of a bunch of these Japanese face masks that are like made of different like, I don't know, they're supposed to be different essences, right? It's like honey and charcoal and like whatever. I don't actually know if they're different. They just have the label of being different. And my sister gave that to me like 2 years ago, and I have never gone through it fully. So it's been a slow whittling of trying to get through it, because face masks aren't actually my thing. I thought they would be, right? Just like, oh, you know, nice, like choose a night to just do it, but I never think about doing it. It's not like a part of my routine, so I just have this like big box of like face masks that have been sitting in my drawer for a while. Some of them I think are expiring, but some of them don't, or haven't yet, so I'm gonna try to use it up soon. And see how far I can get into it. What made me try out Paintool Sai? It was sort of a desire to just kind of get out of Photoshop for a while. Like the same logic of, you know, trying to work at a cafe instead of at home, or moving to your living room or something like that. Like I just wanted to try something new, change of pace, and it was really nice. I think it was definitely very helpful in kind of disconnecting my brain from like work and helping me really treat my free drawing time as actually being separated from the program that I use for work. So I also just really like Paintool Sai. I always have. It was my first program that I ever had, and I always think of it fondly. I think it's one of the best drawing programs to use still. It's very simple, it's very lightweight, and not very expensive either in the grand scheme of programs. So 10 out of 10, love Paintool Sai. Will always love Paintool Sai regardless of what age or what part of or like what stage of my career I'm in. And I just wanted to give it a try again. I'm back in Photoshop, obviously, but I will still have Paintool Sai open sometimes just for the good memories. I had a lot of fun in it recently. I think my stint drawing in it has really revitalized a lot of my energy towards drawing personal things. Cause yeah, I hadn't, up until I started using it, like earlier this year, literally like the last month or whatever, I hadn't really been doing any personal stuff. That was good. Spina, welcome. Steven, thank you for the 2 years. Twitch Prime sub, thank you so much. So do you think you're going to continue doing fun or personal drawing work in that instead then? Not necessarily. Again, it's sort of, just because I felt like it, I don't think I need to say like, that's what that's for and this is what this is for. Mainly because I feel very differently every day. So personally, whether or not I use Photoshop or Paint Tool Sai is really just going to come down to whether or not I feel like drawing in either program, because they both feel very differently, or they feel different to use, I guess is how I'd like to say that. So some days, you know, drawing in Photoshop feels better. Sometimes drawing in Paint Tool Sai feels better. And I'll always go with whatever program seems exciting to me that day. So, you know, like lately Paint Tool Sai hasn't felt as smooth, so back to Photoshop I go. And I've been enjoying it. It's given me enough time to like fall back in love with Photoshop again, and it's made me appreciate all the things that I enjoy doing in Photoshop over doing it in Sai. Like, I don't like coloring in Paint Tool Sai. It feels very awkward. Painting is not my favorite. I feel like I'm always fighting the program because I haven't found the way that I would like to paint in Paint Tool Sai. So, much prefer to just draw in Paint Tool Sai, but lately I've been more interested in color and all that kind of stuff, so Photoshop is better for that. At least for me. Hey, Gabby. Oh, nice. What chair did you get? Tineva, hello! Finally animating your short film? Congratulations! Hey, Peach Parade! A Curdon brand chair, only got XML chair is broken and you need a chair to replace it. Explain that the arms are too high? I mean, I've heard nothing but good things from people that have Secret Lab chairs, like Gary has a Secret Lab chair. I personally have like a secondhand Herman Miller. There's like a site that sells secondhand office chairs. So it's like, they're usually already customized to whoever originally owned it, but you can buy it for significantly cheaper. So my Herman Miller was probably going to be closer to like a 1200 1,000, 1,200 with all of like the extra stuff. But I got it for like 300. So it was like a super big discount on this chair. I'm not gonna say that Herman Miller's are necessarily like the end-all be-all of comfortable chairs, but it's nice to have like a chair that I got for significantly less than it was worth. So yeah, I don't know. It was like pretty legit, but I don't know. I haven't really experienced a bunch of different like types of chairs, so can't really say. I don't remember. I'll have to see. Up to you. Want to be a concert artist? I've been enjoying these streams. I'm glad. I am always very grateful that people drop by, and I'm always very honored that people like my work. So thank you. And you know, I think being a concert artist is really cool. So it's tough stuff, but I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So I'm glad that it's something you also want to do in the future as well. Actually, question for you guys. So I have to do a talk at a high school. It's my old high school. And I'm trying to figure out like what is a high schooler interested in when it comes to character design, because it's like I could talk about being a character designer in industry. I could talk about just designing characters. I could talk about like I don't really want to talk about this, but I guess I could talk about like getting into the industry. I just find that like really boring to talk about, and I also don't feel like I personally have enough experience to like say anything noteworthy on it, so I'm kind of not leaning towards that. But I could talk about portfolios. I could talk about, I don't know, like I don't know specifically like what high schoolers would be interested in hearing about, because I don't want to like overwhelm them with stuff, you know. I feel like when you're still in high school, it's more important that you're excited about the potential. You know, you're excited about like all the things that kind of go into it, but I also don't know what's useful. Because just me talking about how to design a character, like most of these kids probably know. They live in the era of like absolute open access to pretty much most of the information that like I probably have only just started to learn. So I'm kind of at a loss. I don't know what would be useful or helpful. I assume like portfolio stuff is probably like what they're most interested in. But do you have any general tips on how to get faster if I'm really proud of these? It takes me forever. So I mean, I'd say like generally you will get faster as the stuff that used to take you a really long time to kind of figure out as being like, oh, this was like a good direction, or what, or like good levels of detail, or like all the things that you're struggling to figure out now. The more you get used to making those decisions, and the more you start to see and notice patterns of like, oh, I tend to, you know, like the pieces that err on this side of level of detail or finish or whatever, it'll be a lot faster for you to make those decisions in the future. And so you will generally get faster as you keep kind of trying and developing those same skill sets. But you know, it's hard for me to say like here's how you get faster, because I really don't think going faster is that necessary. If you make good work at the speed that you do, then that's fine. I think there's an argument for professional work, but even professional work, they want to know your timeline. And usually your work taking longer is less of an issue, or they might be inclined to pay you more so that you finish it faster, and then that's like a whole nother conversation to have. Personally, I just don't like I don't know. I don't think it's super necessary that you try to like push yourself to be faster. I think what you should note though is like decisions that you've made because you're trying to like really workshop this piece into something that is solid, that matches your taste, or you like things that you've refined, that you've done for like all of your pieces. Kind of think back into like maybe what are common things that you've decided are like better directions or better solutions, and see if you can kind of plan ahead for those things, right? Maybe it's spending less time in a cleanup phase, and spending more time kind of like, what is it, like really focusing your efforts and rendering in areas that you know are going to be super important, super necessary, and then spending less time in areas that you know are like, it's okay if this is a little bit less rendered out, it's a little bit more simplistic. Maybe it's planning your pieces ahead of time so you're not making huge changes to it later on. It could be spending less time in the sketch phase when you know that most of your drawings are found later on in the you know, rendering process. It's like, it's stuff like that. But I honestly think most of your speed ultimately is going to come from efficiency. It's going to come from you having enough experience built up to kind of no longer need to deliberate between, you know, should I do this, should I do that, picking and choosing between like what's the better option and the better like direction for something. That stuff is going to come with time. Your confidence is going to come with time, and as you get more and more used to making those decisions, it's just like way easier for you to just kind of brush over stuff that you would have like spent time thinking about, and now you're just like much more, again, efficient at picking and choosing the battles that you're gonna fight with this specific piece, which ultimately is not like actionable stuff. It's more so like, hey, you're doing great, you're fine, don't worry about getting faster. If what you can make in the time that it takes you to make is good and you're proud of it, then stick with that. It's not a big deal to be faster. Don't feel like you have to be. Most of the professional world is fine allowing you to take however long you need to make good stuff. They want good stuff. They don't want rushed work just because they get stuff faster. They still want to get like quality, you know, product out of you. And so even if you're worried about it from like a professional standpoint, like, it's good if you're fast, but prioritize quality and you'll be fine. Let's see. Oh, I gotta catch up on the chat. Is the talk for a general audience, people who are in our class, and those who aren't really interested in art? They're all art students. Yeah. Portfolio talk would help. I'm a high schooler and want to hear about what the process is like, and also the pros and cons of working in the industry. Pros and cons of working in the industry. Okay, that's pretty interesting, actually. Well, there's a lot I can say about working in games. That's for sure. Personal journey. When you say what the process is like, do you mean like the process of designing something for games, or the process of designing a character straight up? Because, like, I don't want to choose too many things to talk about. I think it'd be good if I just picked one specific thing. And I'm worried that if I decide to talk about, like, I don't know, if I decide to talk too much about, like, being a character designer in video games, it's kind of not enough like time and space to talk about like actual character design. So I need to really pick and choose like how I spend that time, because I would like predominantly most of the time to be taken up by Q&A. I think it's a lot more helpful personally if people ask me questions that they're specifically curious about versus like me telling and talking at them for like 45 minutes. But then again, I haven't been a high schooler in a hot minute, but I feel like I remember my attention span not being that great, but then also my like confidence not being that great. So I don't think I've ever asked a speaker questions after they've talked. So I don't actually know if like they would be interested in doing like an extended Q&A, because maybe they're too scared and shy, which I understand. So I don't know if a Q&A is actually what they're interested in. Maybe we'll just talk about how to know when your portfolio is ready, or like find confidence to apply to jobs. Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate part is that a portfolio is really only ready like once it has all the things you need to apply like for a job. Like once you have like a thing in it, you could start applying for jobs. Technically it's ready. Is it good? Like that's like a totally different conversation. And I feel like that's also like, okay, well if you work in games specifically and you work in this specifically, then I could say what is a good thing to put in your portfolio. But I can't really say like, I can't really speak to, hey, if you have all these things then you're ready. Because I feel like the only way you know you're not ready is if you don't get the job. You know, if you've applied and then you don't get it, then it's like, okay, that's a sign. Or could be, potentially. It doesn't always mean that your portfolio wasn't good if you don't get the job, but, you know. But, yeah. Pros and cons about the game industry. Process of designing in general. Games industry might be too specific because not everyone want to go into the games, but useful to go over it briefly. Pro visuals and presentation even invested in one slide per talking point. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I try to, I can't use a ton of like current art that I have because it's all under NDA. So I'm trying to like put in as much of my like personal art in it as possible. But yeah, I mean, I was, so basically what I have done so far is I've kind of tried to define what it means to be a character designer in games, specifically because I feel like, you know, I can't really speak to what it's like to work in the industry at large, because it's really different depending on what industry you're in, and I haven't done film or games, right? Or film or animation. So games is the only thing I've actually worked in, and I feel like it'd be disingenuous of me to represent being a professional artist without specifically saying that like all of my experience and again all of the things that I focus on when it comes to character design is predominantly because I work in games, right? There are certain things that you don't need to think about when you're working on like a 2D animated like film. There are things you don't need to think about literally when you between like working on like in a 3D animated film and working on a game with 3D characters are totally different things. So it's like the overlap, I don't really know if there's much overlap, and I don't want to assume that there is when I haven't personally experienced it. So part of me is like, maybe I really should just like focus on games. So the part that I started writing was basically talking about what it means to be a character designer in games, which talks about kind of the 3 pillars of being a character designer, is creating like compelling designs, supporting the pipeline, and creating vehicles for other disciplines, right? So those 3 things are like the basic building blocks of being an active participant in the video game pipeline. And that's why being a character designer is not enough. You have to be very, very like specific about how you approach your job that makes you an active participant in the pipeline versus just like, I'm someone that draws characters, you know? And I wanted to talk about it because I felt like maybe people don't understand that there is a difference and that just doing and drawing characters on the side is not necessarily like the same thing. But then I'm also like, maybe this isn't for high schoolers. Right? Maybe this talk isn't for high schoolers. Maybe this is for like college students. And high schoolers just like want to know how to make like a cool character. But then I also don't want to like infantilize high schoolers by being like, hey, let's design a character. Like, they know. They probably have like OCs and stuff. Like, I'm not giving them any new information, but you know, then I land here again wondering how am I going to give them valuable insight without completely like boring them out of their minds. You know, right now I feel like having a talk about building a portfolio and more information about specific industries would have helped me fill the gaps that guidance counts. That's true. They don't. High schoolers don't really get a lot of information. That's kind of why I felt like talking about what it means to be a character designer is very important, because like I think some people when they say they want to do characters, it's because they like drawing characters, and that's the vast majority of people usually, because that's how they get into art. And then they say they want to do that as a job, but they don't know what it means to actually like what the day-to-day is like, what skills they need to learn, and that's not even like including the portfolio portion, because usually when people talk about portfolios they talk about like college portfolios. I don't know how many of them like are really talking about like after that. I assume some. But like what is good for a college portfolio and what is good for your general portfolio are totally different things. Used to got into art program. Remember having a little Q&A with our illustration professor at the start of the semester. A lot of people want to know if their parents approved of their career as an artist. So you and high schoolers is treating them like a person who's interested instead of highlighting the fact that they're high schoolers. Yeah. Ideally, I would honestly just like for it to be a giant Q&A session where they can just keep asking me stuff. But I know that it's probably super boring to like listen to someone talk and there's nothing happening elsewhere. So I would like to collect my thoughts before then, but who knows. How's your work at Riot been and the adjustment to the new place? It's been good. It's been pretty hectic, but can't complain. It's fun. At what point would you say it's finally time to start considering another career if you aren't finding any success in your art career? So, look, I'm not a good person to ask this because I'm not going to have another career outside of art. Like, art has to work, right? So that's just me. But I'd say, you know, do what's good for you, right? Do what's good for your life. If you need to start investing time in a different career because you need to survive and eat and pay bills or whatever, like, do that as soon as you need to and invest time in whatever you need to do to survive. That's like honestly more important than art. Because art will just stick around. They'll stay and you can pick it back up at any point in your life if you want to. It is hard for me to say like what are the signs. But you know, I don't think you should feel guilty about doing it if you do. And I don't think you having to do that means that you can't ever keep doing art for a hobby or try to do art professionally again. You know, again, make the best choices that you can for yourself in order to survive, in order to live. Art can wait, and it will wait. It doesn't have to be now, it can be later, it can be never if you decide never to do art again. But, you know, make whatever decisions and choices that you can at this moment that you feel are best for you. Don't try to pigeonhole yourself because you feel like if you can't make this work, it's over forever. And it's not, you know, a failure and it's not disappointing that you have to make this decision. I think it's pretty it's a pretty like, I don't know, just like oversimplification of the demands of life, of existing in our current state of time, to expect someone to have just like picked a thing and then stuck with it forever. So wherever your life takes you, or wherever you choose to go with your life, like if art's something you want to keep in it, then that's a choice you make. If art's something you want to let go and move past, then that's also a choice that you make. Regardless, it's just a choice. It's not a bad thing, not a mistake, not a failure. I don't think time invested in something that you wanted to do would ever be a mistake. It was just a choice. Do you think it's better to be able to draw in a different style than specialize in one for a new artist to find work? I think it's useful to be able to draw in different styles, and I think it's also very helpful, like learning wise, to work in different styles, just because you get to learn basically all the different ways that appeal exists, right? The benefit of trying and practicing different styles is that you kind of get a sense for what things are similar and what things are different across different visual aesthetics, and it's kind of like market research if you think about it. So for someone like me, I like drawing in different styles because my mood changes and that affects how I work. And a lot of the jobs that I've gotten have been because I practice in a different style, I draw in different styles. It's not so much that they liked me because I do it, it's more so that they liked that I did it, because that means if they decided to put me on a different project, I'm not gonna absolutely struggle to mold or modify myself. But, you know, again, it's like, if you do specialize in something, then you will get work that specifically appeals to that specialization. So if you only really want to be working in a certain field or a certain style, then choosing to specialize is not a bad thing, because it just signals to people that, like, hey, this is what I'm good at. If you hire me for this, then like you're gonna get the best version of this, right? So I think there are arguments for both. I personally like drawing in different styles, but I don't think it is absolutely necessary. It is a benefit. I'm a full-time character concept artist at Riot Games working on an R&D project. Character artist is a separate thing. Character artist is the official term for 3D modelers that do characters. Yeah. Which is something I learned. It is not something that you know until you've, like, accidentally said that you're a character artist, and they're like, oh, cool, like, you know, and they start asking you questions that you clearly don't know the answer to. Look up most common questions asked about your career, answer them in PowerPoint visuals, and host a Q&A after. Common questions asked about character design. I feel like most of it's just like, how do you get into it? Just like, do you mean like a job? Do you mean like, how do you get into? I got into it because I liked Inuyasha when I was like 2. So, I don't know, but I mean, it's good. Yeah, like I imagine I can probably suss out what people would be interested in knowing as a interested individual. Generally people in high school and people who are like in college and adults tend to ask the same questions if they don't know what to ask. So I don't think I will. Yeah, I guess it's just more so like, I'd like to give them information that isn't common. Even though it's usually the common stuff that I think is helpful, right? Answers to the most basic of questions is like usually what they're interested in, but I remember like when I was starting to get into character concept, like I felt like no one actually told me what made concept for characters different from character design as like a hobby. Because like I drew characters all the time. I could design a costume. Like, what's the big deal? Like, what's different? Which is why I framed it that way so far. But I will have to think about whether or not it's just like getting too in the weeds and I should like kind of expand it out a little bit further. I think talking about portfolios is probably much more like what they're actively interested in. So that's probably a good thing to include. I don't want to like get too abstract because I know I would love to do that. I don't think that's actually like what they're interested in though. Having expectations versus reality idea around games design as a career would be useful. Because I think, yeah, when I was in high school, I really wanted to be an animator, so I go make work like Gurren Lagann. It's kind of a different industry as it turns out. Well, R&D concept artist is not the title. I am a concept artist, and I work on an R&D project. So I work in the R&D department, but that's not in my title necessarily. Yeah, okay, so I can give you like a, here, let me just show you what I have, because, why not? It is very much like a couple slides, and then, after that, it's just like, so basically, like, the difference between doing character design in general and being a character concept artist is the fact that the reason why we're doing our jobs is different, right? The reason why I'm designing a character usually is because I'm trying to serve a purpose, I'm trying to serve an assignment, and that assignment is trying to serve a larger vision for a different group of people, a different group of teams, ultimately to service the player, because I work in games. So the goal of like a character designer, if I'm to drag this over, no, the goal of a character designer is, how I've synthesized it, is like these three things, right? The idea that, like, yes, we do make characters that look cool. That's like basically the only thing that really overlaps with designing a character for like an OC or a hobby, or even just a one-off thing. We're trying to design characters that are cool and interesting. That's absolutely the commonality. That's why we're called character concept artists. But the other two things are the reason why we're different, is because generally we're trying to support something larger than us. We're trying to support people that work outside of our team, outside of our discipline, and even people that are working outside of our company in general. Because the pipeline is one big collaborative like train, right? It's one big collaborative system of a bunch of different people. We're only a part of that system. And to be very cognizant of that is to understand that your decisions, your choices have a cascading effect on everyone else that comes after you, because concept artists have the pleasure, the absolute honor, the curse of coming before everyone else. So before a lot of things are even decided, we have to come up with the initial vision. So we have to always understand that we are not the sole superstar of anything. We are merely a servant to what is the overall vision of something. And the last thing is creating vehicles for other disciplines, which is essentially the same thing. It's like helping other teams do their job through characters as a piece, a product, a part of the asset, right? Like that's using characters in a multifunctional way, right? So differences, again, between just making OCs and being a character concept artist is understanding all the different ways that your character has to support other elements. It's understanding all of the different things that have to go into it to make it useful, to make it multifunctional, to make it worth basically sinking millions of dollars into. And when you're designing a general character, like an OC,
you don't have to worry about how someone else feels. You don't have to worry about whether or not you have a limited, try count, right? Poly count. You don't have to worry about if you're going to be able to use like different, like specific, I don't know how to describe this. If you are able to use alpha cards, technical things like that, if that's even in the cards for you, for the game, for the product, like that's all going to change incrementally aspects about the design, and you have to learn how to account for those things on top of creating an interesting, compelling character. And so like I've kind of then went in and like described that, right? Because obviously, this stuff is kind of a little high concept if you just have barely even done anything in regards to making a character for something else. So I kind of went through and kind of described it, designing like a memorable character or cast of characters, because characters are very important. They're usually the face of product. They're usually the thing that people latch onto because we as humans latch onto things that look like us, or evoke sentience or evoke something that we like. So our job obviously is to make or attempt to make memorable characters. But then on top of that, we're trying to provide other people the opportunity to use our characters in a way that's efficient, in a way that is subtle. So we're not literally telling them this is the story or this is the world. It's using elements of the character's design to vocalize things that may or may not need substance or extra kind of like flavor to make an impact on someone, either subconsciously or actively, right? So I used Reinhardt as an example of this. The idea that this is a character in a game that needs to fulfill certain demands. And I used this example because I think it's a very good example of being a very obvious character, right? When you look at him, you know exactly what he is, what he does. So I used him as an example because if we go with, and this is not his original like brief, right? But how I described it is this character needs to communicate that they are a tank who mixes traditional and futuristic tech. That's a very basic, specifically vague understanding of who Reinhardt is as a character. So then we zero in on this as an assignment. So him being a tank is a game design thing. It is what the designers for the product have decided is an important aspect of their overall like game experience. They want a tank character that is a basically collection of functions. It's a collection of mechanics, right? When a game designer creates a character, they're not thinking about them in terms how we would think about them, right? They're creating them because they fulfill a specific caveat within this grander scheme of the game. So we need a tank that can hold all of these mechanics, right? All of these movement styles, all of these skills. And so we have to make this an undeniable aspect of who they are. When you see Reinhardt, you know he's a tank. Mainly because he has physical attributes that describe him as a tank, right? He's large, he's got massive plate armor, like he's got like a massive blunt weapon. Like you kind of get the idea his character's a tank without you actually needing to know that or read about it beforehand. So our job is to make sure that he doesn't look not like a tank. And even if he doesn't look like a tank, like for example D.Va is often marketed outside of her mech because D.Va as a character is interesting as being D.Va, the girl in the not jumpsuit, but like the actual pilot is the interesting part. But when she's actually playing, she's in her mech, which is bulky, which is obviously got all of the markers of being like this protected, kind of bulldozing, kind of, I don't know. I never played Overwatch, but so again, need to describe that he's a tank, and that's a game design request. A narrative request is the idea that this character mixes these two things for some reason. Now, this is multifaceted because Overwatch as a game aesthetically mixes traditional and futuristic aesthetics. But Reinhardt specifically is interesting because he's a knight, more so than any other character, has the like icon, silhouette, all these things of being a paladin. But he has rockets, right? So that's very specifically mixing two different things. That's not for us to explain to people. That's what narrative and ultimately like whatever other team decides to tackle that. That's their job to explain that to people. But our job is to introduce the fact that this is a very important part of the character. And then the last thing is, you know, the fact that he looks like this. Our job is to make sure that we take all of these elements and we make them look cool and make them interesting. We make them look cohesive. And it doesn't feel like we just tried to stuff A, you know, B and C into something. Everything feels like it has to be one planned, like purposeful piece of design. So you look at something and you're like, cool, someone designed that. Awesome. But this is the difference, right? No one who's making an OC is thinking about these things actively for someone else. You can think about these things on your own, and that's fine, right? But it's not like you actively have to serve this kind of result to someone for them to test, for them to like, you know, put into like a build, for them to use in focus groups, for them to show beta testers, right? And understanding that this is a core part of what we do and how we approach characters, I think is a fundamental difference between knowing that you want to do character design because you like drawing characters and knowing what it means to design characters for something within a pipeline, in an industry, as a professional. And then I go kind of into like the other part, which is supporting the pipeline, because that's the other stuff, right? You're gonna eventually have to make stuff like turnarounds, call-out sheets. You gotta make stuff like props and VFX sometimes, if you don't have someone else to do it for you. Movement studies, sometimes you're asked to be the secondary illustrator or the primary illustrator, because for some reason people think that concept and illustration are the same thing. And also like doing stuff like paint overs and mock-ups. The animation has like a set of movements that they've done and you need to paint over it to show them how to push it, you know, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes marketing will ask you to cough up all the work that you've done and they'll put it and plaster it all over the walls even though you didn't want it to be up there because it was a shitty drawing that you made at like 2 a.m. one night when you're particularly crunching. But they just decided that they need all pieces of art, and all pieces of art are game for blasting all over the walls. You know, so that was like an explanation of what I had done. And then after I wrote that, I was like, shit, is this too like non-interesting? Like, is this like not the reason why people like character design? Would this be demoralizing to listen to? I don't know. But yeah, I gotta finish that at some point and figure out if it's useful. Because again, like, I think there are stages to when information is impactful for people, and it's not like high schoolers wouldn't like understand it. I think they absolutely would, but it's more so like to do that and then to transition into something else. I wonder if that's just like so much information that they're just gonna be so fried from it, because that's a lot, right? Like if you don't know anything about character design, you're going in thinking that you're just gonna draw characters. Like, I don't want to stop them from enjoying that by telling them like, hey, it's got a lot of baggage and this shit is hard. I just don't want to lie to them, right? Like, I don't think a high schooler would necessarily benefit from me saying like, it's cool, it's fine, have fun, don't worry about it. So, you know, that's where I stand. I think I'm more so just worried about overwhelming them. I'm not so worried about them understanding the content, because the content is not like crazy weird if you've been like if you've been like a student in the modern era, I think generally they probably know what's up. But yeah, I don't know. Thank you guys for liking it. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed that. Yep. I mean, so like after this, right? Originally I was just going to go into like, hey, so let's talk about what makes like a good solid character. And thinking about it, it's like I think these people like they know how to design characters. I mean, maybe they haven't taken a design class yet, right? That's a totally different thing. But they don't need like a crash course on designing a character necessarily. If it is far more useful for me to talk about like portfolio stuff, but again, like I feel like I can only do one extra thing and not both. So I'm kind of at a loss of how to best spend that time. But I might have to just ask the person who's putting together the whole event and just ask them for their opinion, since they actually work with high schoolers. If like they would actually be interested in this, because obviously portfolio stuff is always very useful, right? But I don't know. I guess my main like preoccupation with this is just I don't want to just dispense stuff that they could find if they just googled like how to be a character designer, you know? Which is why a lot of that comes from like my personal experience working in character design as like a concept artist and realizing how much of my job is not just designing cool characters. Which is always something I felt like I never got told as much, or it never got emphasized to me. But there's stuff like, here, you should have this in your portfolio, like on YouTube. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, maybe that's not like as special to tell them, because it's like, yeah, you could find that information if you wanted to, but again, right, quality of that information, whether or not it's still worth talking about, it's all still very valid. I could, but again, like, then I'm just gonna stand there without any, like, slides and stuff, because I can't prepare that. I mean, unless I make, like, two different presentations and just be like, guys, just tell me which one you want me to click on. It's just, I don't want to be standing there, like, gesticulating, trying to, like, talk about stuff. You know, again, unless it's like a Q&A, right? And they just ask me whatever. But yeah, like I want to give them the opportunity to just ask me about that personally versus me being like, I'm going to assume that this is what you care about. But I don't know. Maybe I should just like chill out on wanting to give them new information and just give them like solid good information. Even if I think it's pretty common to get this information. I don't know. I was always very frustrated that like it was so hard to specifically be told what a character designer did for a day job. And then to finally start working in character design and realize that all of these skills that I thought I had, being able to draw characters well and drawing nice looking characters, was only like 10% of the job. And then realizing that like it's not enough for me to be able to draw characters well. Design is a totally different field, and I was not prepared at all to actually design characters with purpose, with meaning, and then to turn around and have all these other designers and like all these other teams be like, hey, yeah, I need this character to say this and that, make sure we don't do this and that, and make sure it doesn't look like this and that, but also make sure that like legally we can do this, but like legally don't do this, and then like 5 months later be told like, hey, yeah, so this whole change and this like movement set change, so like we need you to do this and that, and we need you to do a paint over. Like none of those things did I ever do prior to actually working in character design, because I didn't think it was anything more complicated than just like, hey, let's just make a cool character, you know? Would you advise covering everything it takes to learn it on your own? I'm trying to like be more. I'm trying to say I don't know more often. And I think it would be very slightly disingenuous of me to say that, or to give you advice because I didn't learn it all on my own. Did go to school, right? I've had arts education my whole life. But because of that, like the only thing I can say really is like stuff that you probably already know, which is, obviously there are extended resources out there. People are trying to make arts education online, less accredited, right? There's stuff like that can help you if you're really lost. But beyond that, like, it's really about setting goals for yourself when it comes to specifically what skill sets you want to work on and what you want to achieve. And realizing that you can't possibly shove everything that you want to improve on and fix in your work in the immediate future. You have to allow certain things to fall to the wayside so you can focus on the very specific things that you can work on tomorrow. And realizing that like this is an investment that is going to strain your patience and it's going to strain your energy and your enthusiasm, and that it is totally fine to take a break, to not to put it down and decide that you want to take, some time to work on something else. But then also recognizing when, like, being truly very honest with yourself about when your maybe hesitance to fail is stopping you from actually learning the thing that you're struggling to comprehend. But again, I think it's disingenuous of me to really give advice on this, because I did go to school and I did have help and I have talked to teachers, even if, I'm not really in that state anymore. And there is a period of my life where I was self-taught. Like, it's hard for me to distill once again, like, all of the things that I did, because really in my memory, to me, it feels like I just brute forced all of it. I hated doing fundamental stuff, so I didn't for the vast majority of my career. I didn't, have the money to pay for classes, so I never took courses outside of going to school. I did go to an arts high school. Can't say that I actually learned actual like technical skill, but it opened me up to basically the career of doing character design. I went to arts college. Again, can't really say if I learned anything technically, but I don't regret going to college. So I hope that no one's disappointed when I begin to say things such as, I don't know, or I feel like it'd be disingenuous of me to answer that. Because truly, there are times where I feel like I could absolutely say words. I can say words, and you might find them helpful, but it's not really going to be anything you haven't heard before. It's not going, because honestly, I believe that most people have gotten the advice that they needed probably already, but you just didn't hear at the time that you needed to. And I don't know if I can tell you the things that are going to actually be helpful, because we all have very different life trajectories. So I'm gonna try to, I don't want to say it for everything, but I will try to say it for more things. Because yeah, there's stuff like trying to learn it all on your own without going to college that, like, I don't really know that experience, and I don't know how to make a super 180 like change in my work, or how to improve super fast, because it took me like 20 plus years to do this. But I will try to answer to the best of my ability regardless. Let's see. So happy you're on Twitch, because I feel like it's helpful to be able to see how artists AMR work the way they do, and being able to learn from that. Glad. I'm happy that you find this helpful. Would you mind explaining the pipeline of a visual novel project? I recently bought the Love Spell art book and may be interested in tailoring my portfolio towards concept art or sprite art for visual novels. So my understanding of visual novels is, like, the character design portion is not super crazy, but the difference is that they do focus primarily on the waist up or even potentially bust up part of the character. Everything else is kind of like not going to be seen for the most part. I don't know, I feel like doing sprite work is not necessarily, like, concept and sprite work for visual novels is not necessarily a super big distinction from just, like, making good character art and being a character designer. Doing it for visual novels is not going to have the same level of, like, specificity as doing it for, like, actual larger, like, bigger production games, because visual sprites for visual novels don't get produced. They literally just get drawn. You get different expressions and stuff. And that is kind of very much akin to just like illustrating characters overall, as opposed to doing, you know, stuff as extensive as like literally showing a modular turnaround for a character, showing the modelers like what it means for this prop to like turn in space, and you know, doing like crazy like, you know, animated paint overs essentially of like a VFX thing, right? So I don't know if it's gonna be that different from just doing like a very generic um like character design portfolio, because sprite work, I feel like if you have a good style and you have like a good rendering process, and you're comfortable with doing expressions, right? You're comfortable with doing like character design in general, there's no reason that you're not like already fit to work on sprites. I think it's more so just like finding sprite games to work, or sprite visual novels to work on, because a lot of them don't. I don't know. It's hard to get into visual novels. I feel like it's a very insular community, but they do have forums and stuff if you're interested in doing that kind of work.
Why do you think he uses reindeer? It was on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for
Ozone, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Thanks so much.
It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, although there were no reindeer. Cats at the word.
Where did he go?
Oh, he went to deliver letters and presents to other families.
Father Christmas brings presents, doesn't he?
He does, boy, but the postman brings presents to people who live far away, like,
Will Father Christmas be able to get you in such heavy rain?
Is this a Christmas lo-fi playlist? Okay, look, I know the rest of the world is ready for it to be Christmas, but I'm not. So I'm glad I realized that 37 minutes after it started playing. Okay, well, since it's almost over, I'm just gonna let it play out. But hear me, I am not of the proponent that Christmas season should begin before Thanksgiving has happened. Do you have any tips for painting? I do studies, but I don't know if it's actually helping. What are you trying to get tips on? What are you trying to accomplish? What style are you trying to do? You're right, studies don't help if you don't know what the answer to that question is. potentially dumb idea, but we're gonna see if I can make this work. Do you know today's Pocky Day? It's Pocky Day. Damn, I don't have Pocky. It is 11/11. Okay, yeah. Now I remember it's Pocky Day. I've been noticing my peers in art school draw the same stuff I'm drawing, but better. No real structural differences, but I guess their line design is better. How do you go about improving that? Okay, so I'm gonna answer this based on the fact that you think it's line design, but I can't say for sure if this is the reason why it's better. Or if it even is better, right? But so I'm just gonna answer this on the notion that it's because of their lines. So the way that you generally improve line quality, at least in my eyes, is through understanding like a couple different things. Lines generally, your line work will get better the more comfortable you are drawing anything. So if you tend to draw a lot of characters, your line work when you draw characters will gradually get better and better. Just as your line work for drawing props will get better and better the more props you draw. If you're drawing something you're not familiar with, it's obviously going to suffer quite a bit. So it could be that the people that you're looking at have just a lot more experience or a lot more comfort drawing the things that you are struggling to draw. So even though that you guys share the same kind of knowledge about it, maybe they're just a lot more comfortable with the shorthands that they use to describe something. And to you, that kind of feels like, oh, maybe they're, they have more confidence with it, right? Because that's another thing. Good lines come from a sense of confidence, again, with the thing that you're drawing, but also with the lines that you're making. I talk a lot about not chicken scratching. I talk a lot about being very purposeful about how you put down your lines, because just the act of deciding to put down one line instead of like 15 is going to make a huge difference with your line work. And again, this isn't necessarily like, oh, just draw like whatever you do, just draw one line instead of the 5. But it doesn't matter how it looks. It does matter how it looks. But for as far as you can be confident in that line, allow it to be that one line. So you notice that I'm not necessarily drawing like huge lines. It's because, like, for example, this hat part, I was only confident in this line for this period of time, right? After that, I wasn't really sure where it was going to go, so I stopped it. The important thing is not that this line extended for the whole hat and that I knew, that was just going to be one line, one shape, whatever. It's more important that I was very specific that this was the angle that I wanted this line to be in. Right? That's far more important than making this whole thing one line. Because if I were to draw this whole part in one line, I would at some point start being less confident in where it's going. I would not know where it was going to end. I would probably make some angles and shapes that I wasn't confident in, and it would have suffered ultimately. I would probably have erased it, tried again. And so me saying to reduce the amount of lines you draw is not me saying that you have to draw everything with the least amount of lines possible. It's being very cognizant of precisely what you're trying to describe with those lines, and trying to make stronger, longer, lasting, or even just more efficient decisions about what this line is going to serve, what it's going to say. This, brim does not benefit from me trying to draw this all in one go. It does benefit from me choosing to break this up into individual but smooth lines that allowed me to make decisions about the angles, the length, the silhouette, and the shape of it. And just doing that will also help your lines feel less unsure. It will help them feel more purposeful, and will allow you to have greater control over what it says and what it does and what it accomplishes. There is also speed, although I always hesitate to talk about it because I don't think it's really that relevant whenever people ask about line quality. But drawing speed also changes things slightly, because if you draw faster, right, your lines are a lot more gestural, but you lose a lot of control over that line in particular. Drawing slower means that your lines are a lot more methodical, but it means that you also lose potentially a lot of the energy that a gesture would normally have. And so with that, it's important to consider what kind of speed you're comfortable drawing at, and what times does speed become a tool for you to use to modulate the quality of your lines. Because sometimes I will draw faster to really try and capture an energy, the dynamic energy of a pose, even if naturally I don't draw at that speed. And then I will immediately slow down once I hit a point that is much less, meant to be impacted by that like intent of movement, of momentum. I'll slow down as soon as it's more about capturing a certain silhouette, making sure I get the shapes right, and less about, reaching to get that or capture that sense of movement. So there might be times where I'll throw out a line, but then afterwards I will be very cognizant with the same object to slow down in other parts and then speed up in other parts that I feel like need that energy but doesn't necessarily need the same level of nuance. Certain artists draw slower than others because it helps them create a certain look, right? Some artists really like having the sort of shaky line. Some artists really like having that smooth line. Really depends on what you want out of it. But these are the different ways that line quality can be changed, can be improved upon, can be modulated to achieve the thing that you want, the look that you want, or even just improve your quality overall. I'd say generally, I don't think that line quality will be able to hide basic structural failures. If you have a very loose understanding of fundamentals, it is very difficult, and I would say to some people, impossible to hide what you do not know behind better technique when it comes to line quality. But that's what I'll say when it comes to improving the quality of your lines. Did you always know you wanted to become an artist? Yes. There was no other option for me. I was always going to do it. Trying to paint in general, perhaps I should be more purposeful. I've been painting environments and normal things like mugs and painting in a parallel way, but I want to paint in a more 2D way, so it doesn't help as much. 2D way? Do you mean less realistic? What type of music do you listen to? I tend to listen to a variety of things. Lately, I've been listening to anime songs and Vocaloid covers. But occasionally I'll listen to Broadway. Or metal. Or alternative rock. Or bedroom indie pop, or whatever they're called. But yeah, I'm going to assume that painting in a more 2D way means you mean more stylistic painting? I don't know. Do you have an example of what you're trying to hit? Because I guess I don't really understand what it means to paint in a 2D way. If you're just trying to learn how to stylize painting, that's one thing. Math rock? Oh, I only know Polyphia as math rock. Obviously, YouTube's been shoving Polyphia in everyone's face, and I love Polyphia. So, yes, I guess in a way I listen to math rock. I don't know if that counts though, or maybe they're the only ones. I don't know. Not really good with genres. I just kind of listen to whatever. James Wood. Let's see. Do I know this person? The character designer? Or, oh wait. Character design. Oh. I actually don't know this person. Cool. But yeah, let's take a look. Are they Disney person? They are a Disney person. Okay, let's look. Stylized painting. So, I mean, I'm looking at their stuff, and I can't say that they really do any techniques that I'm seeing as being crazy, like, complicated. I don't know if they have, like, more paintings, specifically, but, like, I don't know if I call these, like, paintings. They are illustrations and stuff, but, like, it predominantly looks like they focus more on the silhouette of their shapes, right? So here's the thing about painting. The difference between painting and drawing is that you focus on, like, with drawing, you focus on creating things with lines. Painting is focused on using shapes and values to accomplish what drawing accomplishes, but from a much more, like, I don't know, it's a lot easier to see these things from, like, a macro level than it is when you're drawing something. So that's, like, the benefit of painting, right? Is that you can use values and shapes to accomplish what lines struggle to accomplish. And, like, for example, this, which is, like, this and this, I don't know. Oh, I think this is an example. You know, again, like, these are trying to create basically larger values, structures, shapes, using colors, textures, and he's not really doing a lot of that, like, you know, 3D realistic painting. He's kind of more focused on using very light rendering, such as using, like, a darker blue in areas that are in shadow. But overall, like, these color choices are not defined by realism or by any metric of, like, this is to describe form, right? This is a relatively flat style of rendering. And even this too, like, this forest scene, it's basically picking out the bare essentials in the background of just, there's a light, there's an area in light, there's an area in shadow, and there might be slight differences in tone, but overall, it's basically color blocking. It's basically cell shading, but with textured brushes. And then when he's not doing that, he's really simplifying that form into, and again, it's essentially cell shading, where you have areas in light, areas in shadow, and then he also does stuff where he adds extra colors, tones, and hues to create kind of like a dynamic interest in certain areas. Like in the water, has a bunch of different other colors, but it's not necessarily shading it. It's not necessarily making it look more realistic. It's more so trying to convey, like, a sense of tone and a sense of, like, dynamic value, or not dynamic value, dynamic hue, without changing the value too much. Because there is slight darker colors under where the trees are casting shadows, but it's not definitively casting any shadow. So I'd say with this artist, you're probably focusing way more on trying to be a good painter. You don't have to if this is what you're trying to do, because what this is trying to focus on is more so shapes, capturing a silhouette, capturing a mood, an atmosphere, capturing movement, flow, and rhythm in your shapes, right? It's a lot more important that you pay attention to the, like, you know, dynamic curves and the structures of your shapes. Because this is where it really becomes, like, one of the only things you have. And kind of foregoing form sometimes, right? The idea of, like, rendering something to show 3D form, you basically throw out most of that outside of, like, basic things, which is a darker blue for, like, the legs that are in the back, right? And focusing more on developing a nice color palette that's pleasing, right? The fact that the spots are a warmer brown and the fur is a very pastel blue, that's a color palette because the person's skin is like a warmer brown, and even a warmer toned coral for like the eyes and the lips, and the hair is just like black. It's just this black, well, slightly not black. It's got like a little bit of tone, but it's still a very simple shape, right? So I think you're probably focusing too much on being a good painter, trying to learn fundamentals of painting, when I think this is far more about using pretty fundamental techniques for painting to not really describe anything in a realistic sense, but to basically have that like very illustrative, very simple quality, and then attaching very basic painting techniques to it, such as using like a variety of not speckle brushes. I think these are like a variety of there's like a certain level of grain to it, so it's probably more so like very basic texture brushes to make the the kind of soft gradients like a little bit noisy. Having, I don't know how he does it, it's probably some kind of like smudge or blur brush for those edges to make it feel more watercolory, right? You've got a very basic like pencil brush to kind of create, again, noise within the whiskers, and also having like kind of brush strokes with the spots. That's not really rendering technique. It's more so just like digital painting, like tricks, technique in a way, but not to accomplish anything like foundationally crazy. So honestly, I feel like if you just try to do more kind of like basically cell shading, but again with like a texture brush, you'll probably get relatively close to what they're doing. But I think the cool part about his work is not his painting style, but more so the shapes that he accomplishes with those painting techniques. Good morning. How did you go about learning fundamentals after waiting a while and unlearning any bad habits you've acquired over the years? I mean, I really think there's not much you can do except be very aware and cognizant of recognizing what are the bad habits that you've acquired, and actively trying in every subsequent piece that you do to kind of replace those habits with new knowledge, right? I don't really think there's a way to go about it beyond just, at least in my mind and my experience, beyond just being very cognizant of the things that you struggle to do, of the things that you have so far not done in a way that is satisfactory. I feel like I haven't used that word in a while. And like establishing new knowledge that, and based on research, based on references, based on, whatever learning material you're using. Trying to, double check to make sure that when you know what the fundamentals that you have in your head are accurate, that they are, actually based in observation, and that you're not just reaffirming bad habits because you haven't been checking your work, basically. But beyond that, like, learning fundamentals is kind of a hodgepodge of things, right? It's learning from, people's educational courses. It's learning from articles, it's learning from Discord, it's learning from whoever decides to make like content about fundamentals, and trying to double check what you know and what you don't know off of that. But I don't really think that was what you wanted to hear. No. I use Kyle's Ultimate Charcoal Pencil for basically, or well, I'm currently using it and I didn't change it at all. Honestly, the Kyle brushes are really good. I really like the charcoal and the pencil. They're both very nice for sketching. there's some stuff in the chat. Do I know who Pigeon 82 is? Yes. Do you often do character design analysis? No, not particularly. Only usually when I am using certain characters for reference. I will try to like look through it and be a little bit more analytical, but generally I try to just be like pretty casual about looking at character designs. I don't try to like decide if it's good or not actively. I don't know. I think that there's a time and place for me to feel like strongly along with like reasons why I feel a certain way about stuff. And I tend to just kind of like, unless I need to, I kind of just allow most things to just exist and pass by without really thinking too hard about it. Like if a character's cool, I'm just like, it's cool, right? And then, you know, you ask me about it, I'm like, okay, well, you know, maybe for this, it's a little bit like, it's just like this part of the design feels very much like less functional, far more just for the, like, kind of power fantasy of the character. And I can argue whether or not the original concept was like, this end result is interesting to me or whatever, but like, you know, usually I'll just see a character design and I'll just be fine with it. I don't really think too deeply about it. Again, time and place for that kind of stuff. Let's see. When you're doing splash art, how do you start your thumbnails about having issues fighting the blank canvas? Honestly, just like try to sketch out your ideas as fast as you can and just do like a bunch of them. Let's see, do I have it on my ArtStation? Oh god, I'm not logged in for some reason. I won't bother. Like for the stuff that I did for Dota, like all of these were originally just line sketches that I did. And I went back in and did like value passes over them. So like I wouldn't really, honestly, like as soon as you have like a basic idea for this, because I'm pretty sure like I drew this character and then I just drew lines to show that like the perspective was a fisheye almost at the edges. And some of these I like actually drew in trees, but a lot of the work that I did kind of came in at the like end of this thumbnailing session where I would actually like put in values and stuff, and then I would define like, oh, this is where the lighting scheme is, this is where like the VFX goes and whatever. So it's really just like trying to drop all of your ideas on paper and then worrying about like making it look nice, translating it later on. There are definitely like times when I've done a sketch just to get the idea out there for me, but then I look at it and I'm like, okay, I know what this is supposed to be, but it looks nothing like that. And if anyone else saw this, they would be so confused. So then I would spend more time trying to just like redraw it until it makes sense, until it looks the way that I want it to, until it conveys the idea that I need it to convey. And there's really nothing to do except just to like drop some stuff on the canvas and then just make it work, right? Wondering if what you thought of more illustrative work like Emily Amiao, if it's also less rendering, more fluidity. Full disclaimer, I don't think I have like I have like the biggest art crush on Emily. It's unhealthy. Every time I see their stuff, like I don't know. It's like you always find that one person where just like, I want to be friends and know you, but I also just like want to see your art from afar. Love Emily stuff. Anyways, that aside, would I consider it more fluidity and less rendering? I think they hit a a kind of middle ground between it, because there are definitely times when I think their stuff is far more rendered than not. But they tend to go with very cel-shaded stuff, I think. So I would say it's far more rendering, but again, like, they use lines, right? And I think a lot of their work has a lot of rendering in it in comparison to the James Wood guy, but not to the extent of, like, being actually, like, painting. I don't think they paint so much as they, like, kind of shade their work, and then it's kind of an in-between, right? Because they use texture quite a bit, but it's not really painting to render something. It's more so painting to evoke, like, an atmosphere or a color palette or something like that. So I don't really know if I would consider that, like, full rendering. I think it's just more so a step towards rendering, as opposed to the James Wood guy. Any tips on painting in an impressionist style? Nope. I do not do that, therefore I do not have tips. Is there a peach in my room? No, there is not. I thought I felt... Wait, no, there was! Hi, Peach! How you doing, baby? Oh. Peach hours. Indeed. Yeah, I remember the painting you're talking about. God, is that on? I think that's on my old computer. I should really get that off my old computer. I used what is it? Excuse my many brushes that I've collected and don't use. I think I used these. The Rod's oil technique brushes. I think they're on his art station. Let's see. Do they have rotation, or do they have oh wait, did they take it down? Oh well, it's here though, I think. Is it? Yeah, so I think it's here. So I used, I think, these brushes for that. These might be slightly different. No, I think it's the same. I used a mixture of that with my normal painting brushes because he has like a ton of mixer brushes in that pack, and I never used mixer brushes before then. So I was definitely testing out his brushes during that time, I think. I did finish them. We're free, Ian. I'm free to suffer in how little free time I have now. Oh wow, yeah, that was pretty long ago. I'm surprised you still remember my work. What sizes are my canvases normally? They are usually about 30 inches by 30 inches at 300 dpi. Could have been stretch. I will. How has work been for you? It's good. It's been pretty busy. My team's pretty small. So, and by small, I mean, it's just me. Doing concept for the most part. But it's alright. I really like my team, so I've been having a lot of fun. Ugh. You don't ever like go to campus, right? You're not one of those types. Well, I don't blame you. It's pretty far from where you live. Pet Peach? Miss Peach, are you gonna get pet? You gonna get pet, Miss Peach? 1, 2. Pet. She ran from me into her little cat bed. Do I still play D&D? Yes, I do. Mayo, thank you for the raid. Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, I mainly go to campus for the social interaction. Thank you for the goblin raid. Yes, back to Photoshop. Do you ever feel pressure in your eyes after drawing too long? Yes. I think you just have to take precautionary measures if you have sensitive eyes. I know some people say that blue or orange lenses help them with looking at computer screens for a while. Some people will just recommend, like, you know, frequently looking away, taking breaks, resting your eyes. You know, do what you gotta do, but it is very common. Your expressions are amazing. Thank you. Do you have any tips for ones that are more subtle? Yeah. Drawing subtle expressions means that the slightest change has like a pretty dramatic impact, especially if you're going for something that feels complicated to explain, right? So it really matters that when you're drawing or when you're trying to approach drawing certain expressions, you're comfortable trying to, at least for me, trying to put yourself in that state of being to try and capture what are essentially like micro expressions or even just like unconscious nuances to, or subconscious nuances to like what makes that expression different from another one, right? And it really matters a lot, like your intent, how you put lines down, where you put them down, what do they look like, what shapes do they make? Those things start to matter tenfold because, and especially if you're trying to hit a very specific expression, drawing ones that are more abstract, more complicated, either by on purpose or by accident, you know, certain expressions, the nature of them are just going to have to come down to context. But what you can do for an expression is minding what cues on someone's face convey certain emotions, convey certain intents or intentions, right? Like a frown can indicate a lot of things, but it's really the communication between all of the different facial features that give you an idea for like what does that frown really mean, right? Is it temporary? Does it seem like they're reacting to something? Is it permanent? Is it just kind of how their face rests, right? Is it during the middle of like a conversation, so they're not really in control of an expression, but it's kind of just their manner of speaking. It has something to do with the tone of the conversation or what they're talking about. It's really the context for all of these things. It's working, everything working in orchestra that is going to really help you convey that the correct emotion, the goal emotion. And it's really going to come down to being very specific about, you know, what are the eyebrows doing? What are the eyes doing? What are the eyelids doing? How big is the mouth? In conjunction with like, you know, are the cheeks red? You know, are we going for, you know, something more sad? Do we need extra things like tears? Maybe even like a runny nose or even like a bloody nose, right? Like all these things, again, are much more important tenfold in a subtle kind of moment of expression, because you don't have a lot to work with, right? You don't got the big swings. You gotta show, you know, you have to get more mileage out of each small like shift from neutral. So be very careful about, you know, using your tools, which are classic markers for what certain emotions mean, what they convey, what they're trying to tell you as the viewer, and really try to kind of combine multiple things at once. How far, how high, how angled, how dramatic, how soft the eyebrows are, right? How much do the eyes widen? Do the pupils dilate? Are the eyes lidded? Are they half covered? Are they full? You know, with noses, right? Especially if you're in a moment of like kind of intense contemplation, or if you're in disgust or something like that, there's like a slight nose wrinkle that you can always put in there, and that's just enough to, or even putting like a little bit of an eye bag. Again, something with expressions too, it really matters how far you deviate from neutral. So your style does change what your neutral means. So for me, right, I don't draw sometimes, right? This is sometimes because I change my style a lot. Sometimes I don't draw like the bags under the eye, or sometimes I don't even draw like this, right? Sometimes I'll just draw one line and that'll describe it. But in times where I kind of want there to be a little bit more grit, a little bit more desperation, right? She has kind of the feeling of like she's a little disheveled. She's kind of on her toes. She's looking at something. Maybe she doesn't like what she's seeing. So I added 2 more lines to kind of convey a little bit of that not normal feeling. If I wanted her to feel a little bit more negative, I could put like various lines to communicate like this is not normal for her, and in fact we're going into a space that's a lot more conflicted, a lot more maybe steering towards like anger or steering towards frustration. And it really matters that you're catering this to your style, because sometimes your style could consist of putting in the lines in the nostril. So some of the lines that I would put in to describe an expression does not work for how you draw faces. You might very much draw in all these details, or you might very much not draw in all these details, and that will change what you should put in order to convey a certain type of emotion. So keep that in mind. But overall, like, it really helps to feel these emotions yourself as you're drawing them. I'm very much of the proponent of, like, when you're drawing a character, you should be talking to them. You should be feeling what they're feeling. You should, in some way, be empathetic to the struggle they're going through or the elation that they're experiencing. If you can somewhat connect with whatever state they're in, it's a lot easier to then convey that through their face. Even if you're not trying to draw a specific expression, right? It's hard to describe like complex feelings that are overlapping each other, but that's usually what we're feeling always. It's like you can be happy and conflicted because you're also feeling a bunch of regret. You can be happy and also excited because there's so much to look forward to. And you're starting from the same place, right? You're happy, you're joyful, but they go in 2 separate directions. Difficult to draw what it means to have overlapping emotions unless you can recall a moment in which you felt that way, or you can kind of embody that conflict in yourself as you're drawing that character. And I find it's much easier to do that when you're actually actively talking to this character. And that could mean kind of putting yourself in a moment of like, okay, what's happening here, right? To me, there's a lot of stuff that I kind of have like put in my head of like, yeah, this is what she's reacting to and this is what she's holding and like all these things. I'm not going to draw them and you guys aren't going to know what she's experiencing, but it's enough for me to know that so that when I draw it, I can explore what these expressions showcase. Like, what does she emote so that the people around her understand her state of being? And to some extent, I have to kind of embody the state of like being slightly off from neutral, being understanding like, what does it mean to be in awe of something, and what does it mean to be afraid of something, right? What does it mean to see something that you're surprised by, and what does it mean to react either in like relief, in fear, in surprise, in kind of like a state of like frenzy, you know, all these different ways to be surprised by something, and then figuring out which is the right emotion to go for. I have tried to be a much better speaker, because yeah, and you can kind of hear it sometimes when I like go on longer rambling thoughts, I tend to get like really caught up in how I'm speaking, because it's like a holdover from when I couldn't look people in the eye, because there's a period of my life where I couldn't talk to anyone without like kind of stuttering. I couldn't look people in the eye. I couldn't like breathe talking to more than like one person personally. And I realized like halfway through that was not going to work, because like in college I realized that I needed to become a different person if I was going to work professionally, because so much about character design and working in games is about that presentation skill. So I've definitely tried to become more eloquent, but it doesn't stop me from being like a massive overthinker, which is why every time I give advice, there are times where like I kind of stop talking because suddenly my brain's gone in a totally different direction. I'm like, okay, wait, shit, I don't want to like not account for that one caveat in this discussion I'm having because I'm terminally online, or I used to be at least. So I feel like I have to defend things that I'm not even saying. So I'm like, okay, I have to make sure that I mention this, and I have to make sure that I make a disclaimer here because I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying or to take away something that I didn't say at all. And then also make sure that I'm driving forward a main point, and then halfway through talking about it, I'll remember something new that I'm like, oh shit, wait, this is a great way to explain this, and then I'll forget how to explain it halfway through saying it. So like it's still a bit of a mess, but thank you for thinking that I have well thought out responses. I do try to make sure they are articulated somewhat clearly, even if they're not fully thought out, before I start blabbering, because I have I don't know, too much going on in my head, and I'm like, I gotta say all this, and then it ends up with me talking for like 15 minutes. Yeah, I really should. The next thing I really need to practice is like giving myself time to formulate a very general understanding of what I'm about to say before I say it. It's hard when I'm drawing to do that, but definitely the current thing I'm trying to do more often is to kind of try to nail what I'm saying the first time I say it, and then try not to repeat that, because I tend to repeat the same thing or the same thought like 15 different times, and then it's like, oh wait, but no, a new thought has birthed from this main idea that I keep repeating, and then that's like new information, which is nice and all, but like people had to hear the same original thought that I said fine the first time, but for some reason my brain's like, no, let's reuse that same phrase, rehash it, because what if they forgot? They didn't forget. I'm fine. But I never actually do that in practice, so we've got some more training to do, which is basically just me talking to you guys. You guys are usually how I practice speaking publicly before I go off and try to do my work and speak more eloquently.
Miss Peachy, you sleeping? You sleeping, Miss Peach? Head back. Butt back.
I'm feeling okay. I'll probably end at 10 anyway. Just so that I have time to just kind of chill.
Yes, indeed, he is.
Do you visualize the hair first, or just take a few strokes to feel and then fill in the rest? I tend to just kind of throw lines down and then figure out if it works out. If I'm trying to draw the same character, I might do some planning, but As you can see, her hair has changed quite significantly since I drew her first. But all I need to make sure I keep is the fact that she has a little ponytail. So. I will say, it's interesting that, like, I do my best to make interesting characters at work, and then when I go home and I make my own OCs, I just draw myself. Like, I've drawn the same mildly young, like, side bang, like, short haircut girl, like, for years, because that's basically, like, who I've grown into. I always draw the character that I'm gonna grow into, basically, and now this is just who she is, and she looks very much like me, at least how I draw her. And, like, whenever I draw, like, original characters, they very usually I just draw the same character. Like, I never want to make them crazy or go through the whole process of designing them properly, because I'm just like, nah, fuck it, man. Draw myself as a witch, sure. That's it. They're never, like, explicitly me, but they basically are. Struggling with coming up with ideations for a project. I need to make 20 or more. Any tips for ideation sketches? With that, I tend to do something where, like, I'll take a silhouette. Let's just say I make a silhouette. Do I have my script? I do. Okay, so let's just say I make, like, a very generic silhouette of a person. I'm gonna draw a person. Right. Okay, so this person is they look like this, right? Oh man, I should have, wait, is it? No. This is what the person looks like. And I want to do, like, a bunch more iterations of this person. Obviously, I hope your designs are much more interesting than this. But this character can get copy pasted. And then I decided I'm gonna give him, like, a big collar right here. And I'm gonna give him, like, these cuffs on his sleeves. And I'm gonna make this other side longer and then give him some snazzy boots. It's like, okay, cool. Well, then I'm gonna copy paste. And obviously this is just, like, one design you have, right? Hopefully you have more to start from. And you'd be like, okay, well, maybe this guy's, like, main thing is his hair. So I'm gonna give him, like, crazy hair. And maybe it comes all the way down. It's like big braids, right? Okay, so I'm gonna give him some big braids. And, like, well, now he has, like, hanging elements. So maybe I make his, like, shoulders sharper. And then what if I got rid of some of the bulk so he has, like, thinner arms? And instead, because we have this now, we can really define, like, these shapes right here. Maybe he has, like, bigger pants. So, like, okay, I'm gonna make him bigger pants. Okay, cool. Well, actually, this is pretty interesting. So now I'm going to copy paste this one, and I'm gonna, you know, do a bunch more. And you see how, like, it just kind of grows. So if you run out of ideas, right, it's always possible to just take one of your concepts and just run in that direction. If he has, like, a big collar, think about, like, all the different ways that collar can bend, all the different ways that it can, like, angle itself to create different silhouettes, right? The thing with silhouettes is that I generally don't do them because I feel like I don't do them very well, and I also run into an issue of, like, okay, well, cool, so it looks like this, but I'm not gonna, like, be able to copy this silhouette exactly. So the same applies, though, for you know, actually drawing sketches, if that's what you're doing. Just taking one you know, bit and piece, and then just copy pasting it and saying, like, okay, well, how do I iterate on this thing, right? How do I make this look interesting and different without changing the essence of the design? Or maybe how do I make this interesting and different and change the essence of the design and come up with a totally new direction I could take it? And then, you know, then you have, like, a whole new way to approach this. So, you know, this is, like, my go-to if I'm ever needing to just iterate but I don't have any ideas. I'll just copy paste. I'll, like, sometimes take some things, like, maybe say I like this, but I liked the shape of this. Maybe I'll, like, put it back on top. I'll say, okay, well, maybe this whole thing is a big jacket, and like, you know, maybe he's got like big boots down here that like really add something. Maybe it's a hat, you know. It's getting wild, but yeah, basically that's what I would do, is to take like one direction of the silhouette and just try to like extrapolate, kind of pull more ideas out of it, right? This kind of is dependent on you having come up with different enough iterations and ideations that you can do this. If all of your ideations are basically the same silhouette with just like a little bit different, then that's not enough. You gotta really sit down and think like, okay, here's the very first idea I ever came up with for this project. Now I need to think about all the other different ways that this character can exist that don't look like this. I like to think about it kind of like in the idea of like a multiverse, right? You have a character prompt, but if the character prompt is generic enough, there is an untold, unspeakably large amount of ways that you could go about and approach that character's design using the same prompt, right? And I think a lot of people get stuck on the very first idea they ever have for a character, but it's really important that, especially if you're doing ideations, that you really try to push a character past that first idea, so that once you have at least like maybe even 3 or 5 really different but really solid potential ideas, it makes it a lot easier to pull out more ideations and more iterative sketches out of those. So if you're struggling to come up with different enough silhouettes, like they're basically just the same popped collar jacket with like maybe slightly different strap and like belt orientations, not enough. You gotta come up with some different, very, very different silhouettes, very different body types, really push this character to the limit, and then do this technique where you take random bits and pieces, chop them together, mash them together, try to find new combinations. This could be anything from copy pasting them, it could be anything from just like copying one and then changing it a little bit and then mixing it with something else. And then taking those and just being like, okay, well, so this silhouette is cool, but it's not executed very well. Or this sketch is cool, but it's not executed very well. Let me do a full new drawing, a fresh drawing, to kind of expand on this idea but execute it properly, so that people who are looking at this for the first time are not going to judge it based on the quality of the art, but are going to base it off of the quality of the actual design. And that's how you kind of jump off from that. Another way to do that is also to just like look up new references. If you've exhausted your reference, you've absolutely done every idea and squeezed every bit of juice out of this fruit that you can possibly squeeze out, then it's time to look for new references if you're really hurting for new ideas. And that could mean that your references that you did get are just not sufficient enough to support what you're trying to achieve. It could be that they're not giving you enough variety in ideas. It could be that your references kind of led you somewhere and you picked them because they fit an idea versus exploring an idea, right? I think sometimes we fall into the trap of kind of already knowing what we want and then just picking references that reinforce that same desire, that same direction. But to do ideation and iteration properly, we need to accept that our first idea is not the only one that can exist, and that by bringing in alternative references, we give it the opportunity to grow beyond our original preconceived notions of what this character prompt could mean and could entail and could encompass. So it could mean that you need more references, and that's usually pretty easy to remedy. Just take some time to look at things that have nothing to do with your character. You can find inspiration from objects, from other people, from architecture, from fashion, and that could push you somewhere interesting that you kind of didn't know before because it literally wasn't in your visual library. So those are usually the ways that I go about kind of creating more like foundations to then jump into doing more ideation sketches. That's what a bot would say. Tojo, sick 'em. Get him! It's a bot! Nah, I'm sure you're real. You paint your illustrations in your job? Only when I'm asked to. I will say there's a fair amount of finishing art, or finishing your drawings, as a character concept person. Honestly, concept is usually just like backup illustration. So, I don't know how many people still say this, but there used to be a thing where like, I feel like concept artists started getting really, like their mantra was sort of like, you know, concept is not about making pretty pictures. And like, it's not, but usually you will have to make the picture pretty at some point because you never know when you're gonna be the only person making active work on a team and the marketing person or whoever's doing PR or whoever's like your boss or whatever is just going to need random art for merch or random like, you know, pieces for a deck that they're gonna show investors. So like you do have to be good at your your rendering stuff because like usually concept artists do have to finish their own work. You know, some projects will have like an actual illustrator on staff, but usually if there's no illustrator on staff, you are the illustrator. So I have had to finish my own work. I do it occasionally at my job, but you know, I don't mind it because it's nice to kind of have that control, but it is a lot to do that and then also concept characters because it's like two different like things to think about. So Nope. It is an expectation that you can do that on top of doing your own job. And frankly, most concept artists, like, they do know how to finish an illustration. To some extent, right? There are definitely some that are better than others. But, well. I've never been paid more for doing it. But I guess you could argue, like, if they originally hired you to just do concept, and then they decide to add to your contract, if you're a contractor, then yeah, like, I think you can argue, like, that's a totally different assignment. You should get paid for that different assignment. But when you're working full-time, like, you don't get paid more for taking on more than what your job description says. Like, I'm doing some stuff that is definitely not in my job description, but I'm not gonna say no to my art director telling me to do it. It's always a little bit of a mixed bag. I think in certain circumstances, like, again, if your contract changes and they say like, you know, oh, I know we just hired you for this, can you also do the marketing illustration? Absolutely. Extra time spent should be extra time compensated for. But I think generally a lot of contracts that I've gotten or even just like freelance stuff, have said, you know, we want you to do the concept and then the final illustration. So they usually package it together if that's what they want, which is what they usually want. I'm stuck between diving into concept art for characters versus illustration. I like them both a lot, but it shows in my portfolio that I'm divided. Do you have any tips on what to pick? And is there a path to do both in the beginning, getting into the industry? Okay, so, like, here's my thing, right? Concept artists, and I'm not trying to be, like, egotistical here. Concept art is a specialization that can include concept artists can have illustration as a skill. I think it's a lot harder to go from just pure illustration to concept art without having to gain something along the way. Because, like, concept art is kind of just pulling back because you never usually have time to go as deep into an illustration. So you can have the skill of being an illustrator but be doing concept art, while going from illustration to concept art, I think, is a leap in specialization, because designing characters is different from painting them or different from rendering them. And so personally, I think being able to do concept art and having an illustration skill is really good, while predominantly doing illustration but then kind of doing concept art is sort of like, okay, well, if you're predominantly an illustrator and you only kind of do concept, like, I don't know. I think that's kind of a matter of, like, just personal taste. Because when I had predominantly illustration work and then a little bit of character design, I didn't get any concept work at all. It wasn't until I started actively doing more concept stuff that I actually started getting hired for concept work. Because it's a much different skill to have. It's a different set of skills to have. So, you know, this isn't saying, like, illustration or concept is better or worse. It's just, like, from my experience going from illustration to concept, it wasn't until I started showing off work that was based on character design, that was, like, focused on character design, did I start getting concept work. So if you want to get concept work, I would recommend having concept art be your focus and have illustration be your secondary, like, bonus skill, because there's a lot of illustration work out there that you can do. It's a lot harder to specialize in concept art, or to specialize in illustration and then also do concept art on the side. People don't typically go to illustrators to do concept, like go straight to a concept artist who could also do illustration. Now, there is kind of, I've seen other cases, opposing cases, where they'll kind of see that an illustrator can do concept, so they'll go to you for a finished splash, but then they'll say, hey, can you actually also design the character that's going to be in the splash? It's totally bad manners, but they definitely do it. So, again, very subjective. It really depends on what you enjoy doing more. I would really base your decision off of that. Pick the primary thing to be the thing that you enjoy doing the most, not what you ultimately will enjoy in the future. What you actively enjoy doing day to day is what you should prioritize putting in your portfolio, and then having that secondary thing be on your website or in the portfolio, but less so. For me personally, designing characters and doing concept art was far more like exciting, far more fulfilling than illustration. I can do it. I've learned how to do it. I don't enjoy it, even though I do like it. And making splashes and making illustrations day in, day out was draining for me, despite the fact that I learned all of the skills to do it, right? So, I'd say pick one and demonstrate that you can do the other, and it will only be a good thing, but you should pick the one that you know day in and day out you will prefer to have been doing every day, than the one that you definitely enjoy, but it's significantly less fulfilling to do. But increase your speed at making illustrations and content design, a bit slow at the moment. Also, do you have any exercises to practice the ribbon method for hair? The ribbon method, I kind of just... Look. Applying exercises, applying ways... Okay. I don't know what to say, except I just draw a lot. I just try to, like, keep the whole idea that the hair is essentially like ribbons and fabric and all those things in my mind as I'm drawing. I don't know what to say beyond that for that. Except apply it, see where it fails, and try to figure out, like, what part of the method do you not understand, what part of the like, kind of, I guess, like, what part of the, how do I describe it? Of the visualization of it? What part of, like, using this as, like, describing hair chunks as fabric, what part of that doesn't translate for you? And how does that match up or maybe go against what kind of look you want for the hair? And, you know, look up artists that you think do it really well, look up instances where you think it was successful and instances where you think it wasn't successful in your own work, and try to basically reason, you know, why did it look nice here? Why doesn't it? I don't really know what to say beyond, like, apply it once you know the theory for it. I can only go as far as to say, here's the theory, here's how I condense it, but I don't really know what to say beyond that. So, give it a try. If it doesn't work, you don't have to do it. Maybe it doesn't actually work for you. But I mentioned this in the beginning of the stream, but I really don't think you need to worry too much about being faster. If the thing that you're doing right now works, you're making good work or work that you like at the speed that you are making them, don't worry about getting faster. You'll get faster as a side effect of being more efficient, at being better at your, you know, at making decisions, right? At things that would have normally taken you a while to figure out, you'll slowly start to do kind of in the first pass versus like in the second or third. You'll catch things earlier, you'll plan ahead better. Like, I really don't think you need to try to be faster when you haven't even gotten to the point of, like, understanding what are the parts of your process that are working, that are making sense, and what part of your process is dragging you down. It's making you, revise and constantly rethink your decisions. So give yourself the time and the space to just like put in the hours and the necessary like mileage to do it right, and then by continuing to try and reach that point of doing it right, of doing it properly, of giving it the right time and the right amount of energy and effort, eventually you'll reach a point where you'll realize like you can really streamline this process. You can really make it efficient, and that's where the speed will come in. Trying to speed it up before you're ready to do any of that stuff, is only gonna mean your stuff is gonna come out looking rushed. And I don't think that's what you want. Do I draw? Yes. Oh, it is 10. Cool. Okay. Yeah, then I will end it here for tonight. Thank you everyone for the questions. I feel like a lot of people ask questions this time, which is always very fun. So thank you guys for asking questions and for hanging out. I don't know if anything's happening next Friday. So unless stuff happens, which I will put it in the Discord if anything does happen. I think next Friday will also be a stream night. So thank you so much for coming by. Thank you for hanging out with me on Pocky Day. If you can, and if it's daytime for you, get yourself Pocky for me, because I definitely don't have any Pocky at home. But yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for asking questions. As always, I always appreciate you guys asking me stuff and chatting with me on this fine evening. So yeah. Hope you guys have a lovely week. Hope you guys have a lovely weekend if that's what you're looking forward to. Please drop by again if you can. I would love to see you again. And hopefully I can see you next week. If not, love you so, so very much. Please take care of yourselves. Stay happy, stay healthy. And I will see you all hopefully next week.